Hi, I'm Daniel Crumbach, Head of Science and Education at Pinoy. Welcome to the Pinoy Medical Case Review video podcast series. Pinoy created this video podcast series in order to explore how metabolic analysis can either identify potential medical conditions or visualize the ramifications of pre-existing medical conditions on function and performance. We will present case reviews demonstrating how either of these situations were isolated through metabolic testing, and then discuss how medical interventions and/or an appropriate exercise prescription help to improve function or performance. We hope you enjoy the series. Welcome to the Pinoy Medical Case Review series. I'm joined again by Jason Lamond. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks, Daniel.
Right on. So we have another very interesting case today. Jason, go ahead and introduce our case.
Yeah, so 63-year-old female, 71 kilos, 175 centimeters, was referred. She had experienced cancer, and as a part of that process, had taken some medication that had left her with some lung damage. So she had been experiencing some fatigue and shortness of breath, and she wanted to try to maximize that. And so we conducted a ramp test, a treadmill ramp test.
Excellent. So just to orient our viewers again, the legends here in the top left corner, the scales are over on the right-hand side. This is a classic ramp test with a 3-minute warm-up at 1.7 miles an hour. It gives you an idea of the level of deconditioning. Going up every 1 minute during the test up to 3.6 miles per hour, followed by a 2-minute recovery period. So I'm just going to get the speeds out of the way so we can see all the graphics that we have up. So you'll see here at the top is total hemoglobin in grams per deciliter. That's an indication of blood flow. Here is heart rate. Here is SMO2. That is the muscle oxygen, or the percentage of hemoglobin loaded with oxygen. And here you have breathing frequencies, the number of breaths per minute. And here you have tidal volume, or the volume of air she's moving per breath. All right, let's get started. Take us through this.
Yeah, so prior to the test, we performed spirometry testing. And so you have the results up there, and as you're circling with your mouse. So predicted was 2.82. And this would be FEV1, FVC, and the ratio. So it was 2.82, 3.63, and 0.78 would have been the predicted. And then the results were 2.16, 2.78, and 0.78. So we could see right away the effects of the medication had left her with decreased capacity. And so then we went ahead with the test, and
let's expand this a little bit for those that don't know what FBC and spirometry and everything else. So spirometry is something that we promote at Pinoy to be able to identify respiratory capacity issues. And what we do is what's referred to as a FBC test, or a forced vital capacity test, in which we get the person to take a deep breath in. They breathe through a device that measures the liters that they're exhaling. And the FVC is the amount of total air that comes out in 6 seconds. And that kind of represents their usable lung space. Let's just call it that. And it also measures the amount of air that comes out in the first 1 second. And that's referred to as FEV1, or forced expiratory volume 1 second, which is, again, really important when you're exercising and you're breathing 40, 50 breaths per minute or more. Obviously, the volume you can move in 1 second becomes highly important with exercise. So as Jason said here, she should have been able to breathe 2.8 liters out in 1 second. She was able to breathe 2.16. She should have been able to breathe out 3.63 liters in 6 seconds. She was able to breathe out 2.78. And the relationship between the two, so how much came out in the first 1 second versus the total of 6 seconds, should have been about 78%, and she was capable of doing this. So we look at this as being extremely important because we want to know whether is it the total volume that's decreased secondary to the medications, or is it the ability to breathe out? And ends up in this particular case, has more to do with the total volume, because she's capable of breathing out 78% in that 1 second. So what we see is the biggest limiter is she's missing over a half a liter of lung capacity, looking at spirometry. And of course, we need to be able to look at these numbers to determine how well they're breathing during actual exercise. So this is why at Pinoy we recommend doing spirometry in conjunction with doing the fitness test. All right, let's carry on and look at the lung volumes during the test.
Yeah, so thanks for clarifying that, Daniel. So as you can see there, now you're looking at tidal volume, and she gets about, what was it, 1.95. So then we're going to look at that in comparison to her FEV1 that she actually used in the testing beforehand, and look at the percentage of that. And I think you have the actual percentage in front of you. It's pretty good.
Absolutely. So what we do is, as part of our metrics, is we want the person to be able to use 75 to 85% of their FEV1, the 2.16 liters, during the test. If you're below 75, you're heading towards poor. If you're above 85, you're heading towards excellent. In fact, it's a very small range. What this does is identify whether you're using your capacity, limited or not, well during exercise. One thing you'll notice with somebody who has a respiratory capacity limitation is that they bump up against the top of their volumes very, very often, and they will not be able to breathe significantly more after the test is over. So this person's relaxing, breathing frequency is coming down, yet they still can only move 1.9 liters. So this looks like a respiratory capacity issue. And because she's capable of moving 1.95, that's actually 83% of her FEV1. So she is using her capacity during exercise as well as she can. She's never going to get better unless we change her capacity. So what this does is really focus us on what training we would do. It doesn't matter how many times we give her intervals of high intensity, that volume's not going to improve. Respiratory training must be done, and it must be done specific to gaining volume. And I warn our listeners out there, by adding resistance on it, which most traditional respiratory training devices do, that is only going to make them stronger at moving about the same volume they have. So it's really important that you don't use a resistive training device. What you want to be able to do is you want to get them to work on the thoracic and rib mobility, and then really get them to the mobility of their diaphragm and their accessory muscles to be able to engage, to be able to pull that diaphragm down fully, to be able to get more volume in. And so the focus in this particular case for this individual would be a volume training program using no resistance. And the device that I recommend is the IDEAG P100 respiratory training device in this particular case. So we identified a respiratory volume limitation. Otherwise, her breathing frequencies look dead normal, despite the fact that she has a limitation in volume. She doesn't increase her breathing frequencies, but you're seeing some really interesting results on the SMO2 and THB. Take us through that.
Yeah, I think, and again, I think the value, just to add that, the value of having the Pinoy and the Moxie together here in this case is really helpful, because we can confirm or deny the respiratory data that we might think we see with Moxie, right? And so I think that's really nice, as you've pointed out, the straight line with VT and the frequency not getting up, and then we see this THB, so the top line, they're the top dark green line. It sort of just drops, just really, it's pretty consistent. I mean, I would look more of a trend of consistency, but at the end, it actually increases. So we see this increasing trend at the end there in the last third or so, and then actually increases even more after she stops in that 2-minute rest period that you get us to do. And that's really helpful to see, because at the same time, we see the light green line, the SMO2, down further, having a trend again, dropping in that last third. So you almost get this sense that there's some vasodilation taking place where the blood is increasing. She's trying to match the effort because after she stops, it increases. But at the same time, it's SMO2 is dropping. So what's happening with the blood that's being sent? That's an interesting question, because now we can say what's happening as it passes through the lung, as that blood passes through the lung to that oxygen. Is it loading? And maybe you'd want to add a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, if we were seeing a large drop from about 80%, you would assume that they have great utilization and it's just pulling the oxygen off at a massive rate. That is exceeding its delivery, despite the fact that there's more blood delivery going on. But the fact is, because of the lung damage associated with it, and potentially the decreased ventilation from her limited volumes, she's only loaded 37% of her hemoglobin is loaded with oxygen, even at the lowest intensities. Her peak of the hemoglobin loaded with oxygen was 51%. This should be well above 70 and into the 80s. And then during low level activity, it should actually increase because you're stimulating delivery, which is exceeding utilization. So you should see an increase, but actually you can see this person surviving through most of the test with only 24 to 38% of her hemoglobin actually delivering oxygen. So it's really a really difficult situation. And we know it's definitely tied to ventilation, but it also could be tied to a pulmonary issue of transferring oxygen across the alveoli onto the hemoglobin.
Yeah, altogether, it's fantastic because it really just shows the whole process working together. I mean, she's not even having as you said, like this SMO2 should increase at the beginning. She's not even having a constriction, any compression at the beginning. Like a lot of people will start and they have a bit of mechanical compression initially. She doesn't have any of that, but yet the SMO2 drops right away. So it's a really interesting case from that perspective.
So it's great. We have the baselines. We know what to do. We need to increase her capacity, so the amount of air she's capable of moving. Then what we need to do is we need to provide some strength and endurance around that, and then what we refer to as coordination, in which that she can apply that new volume at different frequencies to be able to apply to exercise. You're kind of limited on what exercise you can give her, because you can just be a jerk and give her high intensity work to do, but she's just going to suffer and get no better because you can't deliver. So what did you give her for exercise programming for now?
It's easy stuff for the most part. I mean, she was actually quite active, which is interesting. She loves bike riding with her husband. So she was already actually quite active. I mean, if you had seen her, I think her low end stuff is good. Even her metabolic stuff, I think her fat and CHO was pretty good. So you don't see somebody who's completely inactive or sedentary. She actually bikes quite a bit. So we just added a bit extra onto that. I mean, I'm still waiting for the device here in Canada, unfortunately, to train specifically for her, to use that with her to improve her volumes. So that'll be the next stage for her.
Well, we can really see the way that I teach respiratory volume training is we know that she can move 2.16 liters in 1 second. And she should be able to move 2.82. And we know she can move 2.78 liters when she should be able to move 3.6 liters. So essentially we're missing 0.8, 0.9 of a liter. So what you do is you would start your training at a volume that she's capable of completing and do interval sets, trying to get her to maximize that volume every time. And I love using the volumes here because, it provides you a little more information. Well, she can move at least 2 liters here. So what you wanted her to be able to do is you can do a test at the beginning where you can determine how much volume total that they can move over like a 3-minute period. And then what you can do is you can set your goal to move her FBC from 2.78 to 3.6 liters, going up in reasonable increments to get her to be able to breathe more and more volume. Once she achieves it, you want to recheck through spirometry on a regular basis, and then get her to apply it by putting some strength and endurance around that. So, well done. Another very interesting case. Thank you very much, Jason.
And thank you. And thanks for those great ideas on training. Fantastic.
My pleasure.
Looking forward to module 3 again.
To book a sales consult, contact Pinoy Sales at info@mypinoy.com. To learn more about our products and services, attend our 3-part Pinoy webinar series. Register by contacting Zoe at zoe@mypinoy.com. To learn more about the Pinoy Metabolic Analysis Certification Program, view our video at community.mypinoy.com or contact Zoe at zoe@mypinoy.com. And don't forget to join us on Instagram.